Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Zoom at 8. My name is Julianne Peterson, and I am your host every Tuesday night for Zoom at 8. You know, we have been doing this for over 4.5 years. We have been gathering as a group. I put this together to feed the deals that come out of education programs that don't have an ecosystem, whereby you can find your sponsor, you can find money, you can find insurance brokers, cost segregation, you can find your lender, right? So this is the place to be every Tuesday night. It's like going to a conference that you don't have to pay to get an airplane ticket. You don't have to get a hotel. You just have to sit at your desk and make friends. Again, I'm Julie Ann Peterson with Old Capital. We are a premier provider of debt. So when you have a deal, I would love to have the opportunity to be your lender of choice. So we're going to need your T12, your rent roll, the OM, and your underwriting. And we can give you a real loan quote, okay? Not a high level, something that you can then put into your underwriting model and say, this is how much we're going to need. Because a lot of times a lender or a quote that you get, it'll just simply be, 80%. Have they underwritten it? Probably not. I just saw for the first time today a deal that is 80% leverage. So that indicates to me that loans are coming up with the deals are being priced right, and we're able to provide pretty good lending leverage on these deals. So would love
Julie,
to have that opportunity.
Was that an agency?
It was an agency.
Really?
80% out of Minnesota. So this is kind of a different night because typically we are live with our speaker. But I sat down with Mauricio Rauld. He is well known in multifamily. You'll see him in the conferences. You can go look at his YouTube channels. He's a rock star, syndication attorney, SEC. He brings this value to our network here, our platform. The next step for 2024 is if you have existing LLCs, you need to make sure that you are registering them. And the person that created them or who is managing them, your registered agent, also needs to be named in it and register for themselves as well. That everyone is taking liability. So we're going to hear about that tonight in this conversation.
Let's do it.
So I am excited about today. We have never done this before, but my friend Mauricio Rauld is in the studios for Zoom at 8, and I'm excited. I'm excited to have you here. You're a friend, you're a colleague. What's going on?
I'm pumped too. You know, this is the challenge of doing a live, because I do a live as well. And so it's got to happen when it's got to happen. And sometimes you have guests that just, you can't make it happen. You got to do the pre-recorded, but I love it. I love it.
I'm excited to have you here, not only because, you know, we don't get to spend too much time together in person together. So this is great, but I want everybody to know what you're talking about. And first of all, let's introduce you. Mauricio Rauld is the founder of Premier Law Group and the premier syndication attorney in the country that helps real estate syndicators stay out of jail. Man, oh man, there's quite a few that need to go into jail, but he is one of the few attorneys that actually speaks English, regularly traveling around the country, speaking to real estate syndicators about how the legal piece fits into the overall syndication puzzle. He has also shared the stage with likes of Robert Kiyosaki, Ken McElroy, Brandon Turner. You know, he's the host of The Bigger Pockets, and the real estate guys. Now, also with me, Julianne Peterson. So we're sharing today's stage together. And Listen, why do I have you here today? Not only just to say hi and to get everybody to get on board with you and your practice, but there's something that's changing coming up here. FinCEN is demanding that everybody say who they are, what they're involved in. And when I saw your video, I was scared out of my underwear. And so I thought, hey, can we get you on? And again, we had conflicts, and so this is really cool that we're doing it, and we're going to present this next week. But I really wanted to have you on and to speak to our audience here about what's going on. What are the changes that are coming? This is an immediate attention grabber that just simply you and I and the rest of these syndicators or investors, passive investors, need to be listening up. So, Mauricio, welcome to Zoom at 8.
Thank you. And I'm so pumped to be here, even though I could probably look out my window and see your office because you're like literally down the freeway from me, or we're literally like 15 minutes away from each other. But just like many, I know I think Gary was on your podcast the other day, and it's like, sometimes people live down the street from me and I don't see them until I'm in New York or Orlando or Dallas. And that's kind of, I feel like that's you and me. I see you everywhere. I just saw you at your amazing Old Capital conference a couple months ago. Amazing event.
Thank you for joining us.
Always enjoy watching your new dance moves that you have almost every time. So that's always fun.
Got good time.
Super pumped to talk about this new law. I'm pumped to talk about it, to get the word out. I'm not necessarily pumped about the new law.
Sure.
But, I was talking to somebody else, my co-host, actually, I have another podcast called Drunk Real Estate, if you guys haven't seen it, but Jay Scott is a co-host, and he's like, hey, by then I think he was drunk. Because they're like, hey,
I saw those.
What if I don't know about this? Like, I don't know about this. What if I don't pay attention? I got a bunch of LLCs and I'm busy building my business and what the hell? And I'm like, hey, the saying, right? Ignorance of the law is not an excuse. And so that's why I appreciate what you're doing in terms of, and that's what I'm trying to do, is just get the word out. And hopefully by word of mouth, people are like, oh, what is this? And it's like, oh, they're, watch Zoom at 8, or here's Mauricio's video, or and I'm going to be doing a lot more Corporate Transparency Act posts on social, LinkedIn primarily. Although, Julie, I figured there's a new social media platform out there called Instagram. Yeah, I think it's called Instagram, that I discovered last weekend, and it looks awesome. It's great. And so I've been messing around with Instagram.
How long have you been under the rock?
I apparently have been under the rock for like 10 years. And then I actually went on there and I was shocked to discover that I have already had 1,000 people who were watching my stuff that I never post. So anyway, so I'm now on Instagram too. So Mauricio Rauld is my handle if you want to follow there. But yeah, I'm posting a bunch of stuff everywhere, and I'm going to be talking about the Corporate Transparency Act because it's super, super important that everybody know about it. So I'll take your lead on it, but I'm pumped. I'm ready to go.
So, of course, I did some research before this meeting, and it's the U.S. Department of Treasury. Is it not that is doing this?
You know what? It's FinCEN, right? So I don't know if they fall under. Maybe they're under the. It is probably under the Treasury Department. So the government. Then underneath that is a Treasury Department, and then one of the subsets, I'm guessing, is FinCEN. But it really is FinCEN, which is the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN. This is the governmental agency that's in charge of running this operation, right? This is obviously something that passed Congress. It passed a while ago, about 3 or 4 years ago. Trump, I believe, tried to stop it, and it got overridden, and it was supposed to take effect last year, but then I think nobody knew about it. I think maybe now 2 more people know about it, but so they pushed it to January 1st, 2024, which is when it officially takes effect. And it basically will affect the following people, which I'm guessing is everybody on this call. If you have ever in your life set up an LLC or an LP or a corporation or any entity that you file with a particular state, and that company's still active, because obviously if you've dissolved it, then we don't have to worry about it. But if you bought a property 20 years ago, put it in an LLC, and that property you still own, This applies to that LLC from 20 years ago. It applies to the LLC from 50 years ago, which is not true because I don't think LLCs existed that far back. But you know what I mean? Like if you've ever had an LLC and if you have 100 of them, then you really have your work cut out for you because it's 100 times you got to do this. But essentially what it says is there's 3 types of people or types of entities that this law will affect. So the first one is this, what we call a reporting company, which is exactly what I just said. Any entity that you filed anywhere with a state, LLC, LP, corporation, whatever. Interestingly, because trusts don't get filed, it doesn't apply to living trust or land trust or asset protection trust because trusts don't get filed anywhere. You just create them. So put those aside for a second. But any of these LLCs, it applies to you. So that's the first category of people that it applies to. The second category of people that it applies to are what we call beneficial owners of those companies, right? And we'll talk about that in a second. And we'll actually talk about it right now. So what is a beneficial owner? A beneficial owner is one of 2 things. One, if you own 25% or more of that company, you are a beneficial owner. But also number 2, if you have significant control over the entity, because what the government really wants to do is make sure they grasp all of these people who are tax evading and doing the nefarious activities, money laundering.
Wait a minute, are you
terrorism?
Are you telling me that there are people in the United States that do this? That break the law?
No, not in the United States, but there are people from other countries that will set up entities, right? Remember, like other people will set up entities and they'll hide their ownership because they're like, for example, I don't want to own, just like you guys. Come on, let's be real. You have a client and the lender underwrites at 10%, right? Or 20%, right? I'll be 9.9% so I can stay under the radar and not have to get under it, right? Same thing here. If you 25 needs to be reported, well, maybe I'll just own 24, but I'll keep control. Obviously, I'll keep control. It's my company, but I'll just show up as 24. No. This is what this significant control is meant to do, is capture all of that. So even if you own 1% of the company, but you have 51% control vote, maybe it gives you 51% voting rights. If you're the manager of the LLC, if you're the manager of the manager, if you're the president, if you're anybody who has control that dictates the control of the entity, is going to be categorized as a beneficial owner as well. So either 25% ownership or significant control makes you a beneficial owner. And as a beneficial owner, you have this filing requirement. So we have reporting companies, number 1, beneficial owners, number 2, and then number 3, less important for you guys, more important for me, is anybody who actually does the filing itself. So we as Premier Law Group, we represent syndicators. We set up all the syndication LLCs, manage GP entities. So we now are caught up in this web because we're the ones that are actually filing the actual LLC documents with the state. So as the filer, I have to now, me and my firm have to provide information. That doesn't really apply to you guys, but LLC itself and then the beneficial owners. So for you specifically, we're talking about beneficial owners. So that's who gets caught up in this thing, right? So what does that mean?
So hold on, because we're doing a lot with syndication where you've got a managing members of a borrowing entity and you have a managing LLC of that entity. So a lot of people that are guarantors are that's going to be exposure, right? The co-GP though is going to run under the radar on this.
Depends on what ownership, what percentage ownership do they own of the management company or the GP entity, and what kind of control do they have? Significant control. Yes, if they're a 2% owner because they're just starting out, they're learning, and they just want to kind of get their feet wet, and they own 2% of the company, and they basically have 2% of the voting rights, and they're just there to learn, then yeah, you're going to be exempt, right? But if you are the sponsor, right, or one of the 2 or 3 managers of the GP, usually the GP entity has 1 or 2 or 3 managers of the manager, right? So they're the ones that really are doing the day-to-day. Those are definitely going to be beneficial owners. The LPs most likely are not. It's very rare. In fact, most of them are 80-20 splits. So there's, even if they owned they're not going to be, they're very rarely owning 25% of the whole company, which is really like 30 or 35% of the Class A. But it's going to be the LLC itself, and then the sponsor. And Julie, it gets complicated because, I mean, look, if you and I own an LLC together, fine. Like we're 50-50, you're a beneficial owner, I'm whatever. That's what it is, right? But what if we have an LLC that owns a property and that's owned by another company, right? And then that company is owned by your holding company and my holding company. And then your holding company is owned by your living trust and my living. You can get like layer upon layer on layer. And that's where it gets really tricky. And where the work's going to be on our end, or whoever's doing this is just kind of doing an analysis and going through. Because ultimately what the government wants is to know who is the individual, who is the person living and breathing that ultimately is in control of this or owns enough of this that we want to know and get their information to make sure that they're not doing nefarious activities.
So because I have quite a few LLCs and I can't keep track of them. So I have a company that manages those for me.
Yeah.
Those are the filing companies that you're talking about that are also going to.
They should. I don't know if every particular one, right? I mean, I've talked to a few of them just to figure out their process and what they're going to charge to do all these, the backlog ones anyway. I think moving forward, it'll just be included in the price of the LLC or entity setup. But for the past ones, they're all going to be, most of them will have that service. And if not, I'm sure they're going to be able to refer you to somebody. We're going to do it ourselves. I actually created my own little company just to handle this as well. So if you can't find your person or whatever, you want us to help out, happy to do it. But everybody's going to have to do it. And so one of the things you may want to consider, and this is kind of what I'm putting together, like best practices as well. Like what are good, because I recommend we're going to have to update operating agreements. We're going to have to make sure that, whoever's in charge is taking care of this. Because if they're not, the penalties, we'll get to the penalties in a second. They're pretty egregious. Yeah. There's a lot of best practices, but one of the things right off the bat is if you still have an entity out there that's you don't use anymore, but is still technically active, you should go run and close that thing down, right? Officially dissolve it. So in the past, my advice, honestly, let's just take out Wyoming. A lot of you, I know Wyoming's a pretty popular state. In Wyoming, if you just stop renewing it, after 2 years, it just becomes administratively dissolved, right? And so most of the time, we just let them go. Like there's no harm, no foul. We just stop using them. And then after a certain amount of time, they're just going to get dissolved, right? Automatically. We don't bother spending time and money filing dissolution papers, although that may be a better practice, but whatever. Now I would say, wait a minute, if you've got an LLC, like a Wyoming LLC that you no longer use and you haven't renewed it, if it's still technically active, right? Even though it might be, delayed on your filing fees, but if it hasn't been officially dissolved, then you might be on the hook for that one, right? That might be an LLC that you should be filing all this stuff with. And if you don't, you're going to be subjected to the penalty. So go back through all of your LLCs, figure out which ones you're not using anymore, make sure those have been dissolved. Either you've affirmatively dissolved them, or you can call the state and it's like, hey, is this officially dead? Because if it's still breathing and flapping around and it might come back, you want to make sure you close it, because otherwise you're going to be subject to this new rules starting next year.
Okay, that's fantastic. And that's pretty simple to find that out.
It's like
all different states.
Yeah, you can just go, again, if you've got whoever filed them, you can ask them. If not, you can just go to the Secretary of State and just look up your entity, and it's going to say you're dissolved or administratively dissolved or delinquent or defaulted. So they're all got special different terminology. So you just got to be clear. And that's why I would suggest you talk to whoever filed it or your attorney or whatever to make sure, hey, is this officially dead? Or do I have to do any affirmative step to actually dissolve it, which would be like filing, usually it's called articles of dissolution, and it's just like $50. I mean, it's not the end of the world, but it's just stuff we don't like to deal with. But this may be worth spending the $50 to go dissolve it officially, rather than paying the fines of not filing the appropriate information if they determine that it's active.
Perfect.
So those are your three people, and they have to file. So what is it that you have to file? What's all the big deal, right? So if you're a company, I don't think it's a big deal. So on the company, just the name, doing business as, if your company's doing business as something else, you got to report that. The business address, right? Obviously of the company, and then some kind of identifying number. Usually it's going to be the EIN, but also you could probably do every corporation or entity has an LLC number, an entity number from the state. You probably use that, but I think EIN is probably going to be the default, and give that information to FinCEN, the government. So that's not a big deal. But when it comes to the individual, the beneficial owner, right? Which, by the way, could be another entity, which then becomes the individual of that. So, but ultimately, when it's an individual, here's what you need to supply them with: your legal name, your date of birth, your home address, not a PO box, not your business, your home resident address, some kind of a government ID number. So usually driver's license or maybe a passport number, give that information. And then finally, you got to upload a copy of that document. So a copy of your driver's license, a copy of your passport, or whatever it is that justifies that. Those are the things that have to get filed if you are caught in this web and you're a beneficial owner, which I'm guessing everybody in this call probably is on that list, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Where does that get filed? Is there a FinCEN?
Yeah,
website?
so under FinCEN is developing something called, it's like a portal or a website, or it's really a portal, I think. It's called BOSS, BOSS, Beneficial Owner Secure System, I think it's for, or Safe System, one of those two. That is not up and running yet. Shocker, shocker. And you wouldn't be able to do anything anyway. Maybe you could go look around or whatever, but you can't file anything until January. They say January 1st, but that's a holiday, so I'm guessing January 2nd. And the timing will depend on when you file the entity, right? So for all of the tens of thousands, not tens of thousands, tens of millions. Of entities that have been filed already, right? So prior to January 1st, 2024, you're going to have 1 year, basically till December 31st of 2024, right? 1 year to get get all that compliance done. So you got a little bit of time, a year. If you've got 1 or 2 entities, maybe not a big deal. I've got a client the other day I was talking to, 117 entities. Let's get going now.
That's going to cost them a ton of money.
It is. I mean, because depending on there are a couple. It's not cost prohibitive. It's a couple $100, but times 112 or whatever it was. So if for the prior ones, great. You've got a year. You've got a little bit of time. For the new ones, starting January 1st, anything you file in 2024 moving forward and for the rest of your life, you have 90 days. It used to be 30. They just updated the BOI, the beneficial owner information, the website, FinCEN, updated to 90 days. So it's going to be more like where we live, Julie, California, where we file our California LLC, and then you got 90 days to file the initial report, right? It's going to be same with FinCEN. So you have 90 days from the date that you file to file all this information with FinCEN. And if you file it and there's a change, right? So let's say you're a syndicator and you file this thing within 90 days, great. But then you bring on another co-sponsor. And so now there's a fourth person that wasn't there before, or whatever changes, that somebody that wasn't a beneficial now is, like whatever change that needs to be amended. So that filing needs to be amended. And for that, you have 30 days. And that can be tricky because you might have a GP team, for example, that might have 5 people. And so you let's say it's equal and you all own 20%. So you're under the number, but then somebody leaves and now there's only 4 of you. Well, now you suddenly went from 20 to 25, boom, now you're triggered, right? So now you've just got to be aware of that. So, so any amendment, any change. So ideally you may want to wait till the end of the 90-day period to file anything. So that way you don't get caught on any changes, right? To make sure everything's going. My concern is that, let's remember, Julie, the last time that we had a government website that was in the news. Remember that? Remember Obamacare? Remember when the Obamacare started and you had the website? It cost like $100 million. That's not right. It cost a couple $1 million to build, right? And it was just a disaster. Everybody was trying to register their healthcare information and the thing just crashed.
Yeah.
We've got tens of millions of filers that are going to be on this website from the government. I wouldn't be surprised I'd be shocked. In fact, I would be absolutely shocked if this thing went smoothly. Like, oh, we've got the website up. You just go on there, you fill out your information, you upload it. It'll take 5 minutes and you're done. I'll come back on here and say I was wrong. I'd be shocked if that happened. My guess is, I can't upload. It's not working. Customer service, the system's crashed. I can't even act. So you probably don't want to wait till the last minute. But now that you've got 90 days, maybe you do it after 30 or 45 days. But again, just because if there's any change, additional co-sponsor or co-sponsor leaves or, whatever, that you'd have to do an additional filing. If you screw that up, you're, again, subject to those penalties, which are a pain.
Well, we don't know what those are. So what are the penalties for this filing?
Your garden variety penalty, like run of the mill, you're not doing anything wrong. You're just like, I don't know, I just forgot, didn't know about it. I screwed up, or I gave whatever, $500 a day. On the civil side, $500 a day. On the criminal side, they max you out at $10,000. By the way, per entity. So if you've got 10 of these and you screwed up and you didn't do any of these on 10, or you did it wrong for 10, like, I didn't upload, I got all the information, but I didn't upload the drive, whatever, $10,000 and up to 2 years in prison. They're not messing around. Now, again, that's criminal, right? So I don't know, but I'm guessing it's not going to be like, you're late one day and the feds are going to go knock down your door, right? It's going to be like you just continues and they give you notices and, whatever, probably go to trial or whatever. Like but that's the maximum, 2 years. Unless it's, I think the word is like intentional non-compliance. Like there's no way I'm giving the government my information. Screw you, blah, 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 blah. Now that goes up to $250,000 fine and up to 5 years in prison. So they're not messing around. They're like, hey, we want to get these nefarious actors out there. We want to make sure that there's no money laundering and no tax evasion and no terrorist acts. We're going to be serious. And look, you probably know this, Julie, but for those of you who've never, set up a foreign LLC, like, in a different country, those have requirements as well. And those are like, I think, $10,000 per violation, right? So it's something that you got to keep in mind. So it's not something new. It's just something that is new to the US. The penalties for international, $10,000 a day per violation is pretty egregious too. And that means I didn't report my offshore bank account, or I didn't report that I had some LLC in the Cook Islands or whatever. So it's something similar here in the US.
So I'm thinking about, we get a lot of foreign capital into our deals, right? And they stay underneath the numbers, right? A lot of these people are coming in with LLCs. So these foreign investors are going to need to be filing this stuff.
Yeah.
How's that going to affect the capital coming from foreign investors? Is it going to change things? Do you see it as a hurdle? Are they going to say, I don't want to have anything to do with this? Where my money's coming from? I don't want to be attached to an address. Will it then say, no, you have to have a United States address? Kind of walk us through that.
Yeah, and I haven't seen, that's a great question because I haven't seen too much on it, but I can tell you this. So if the foreign investor is coming into one of your syndications, for example, less of a concern because they're probably not going to own more than 25% and they're not going to have any say. They're going to be an LP like all the other LPs, and LPs are not, unless they're just something crazy. Well, if they're a true LP, then it's very difficult to see how they're going to become a beneficial owner, because unless they have 25%, they'd have to have literally more than 25%, because it's 25%, it's 25% of the company, which means if they own 25% of Class A, of the 80%, then they own less of that of the company. So it's the same thing. I don't know how you guys on the lender side figure that out, but like, if I own 10%, but I only own 10% of Class A, and Class A only owns half of the company, then I really only own 5% of the company. So anyway, I don't think LPs are the concern. Now, the other question, which I don't know if that's what you're asking, and look, this is one of the things that, everybody talks about, like, tax havens and other, like, people say, like, if you're a foreigner, the US is a pretty big tax haven, right?
Yes.
And so I think that's part of it too. So
that's my question.
If you're a foreign investor and you're just coming in, I'm going to go buy a commercial building or a house, just myself, not syndicating, I just want to come and buy it. They're not going to be able to set up an LLC and be anonymous, because they're going to have the same requirements, and they're going to have to come in, and they're going to, so will it dissuade them? Yeah, sure. If they don't want to, provide that information, and again, they may not want to provide it because they're creating some thing, right? Some nefarious activities, and that's what this is meant to catch. But yeah, otherwise you would just, provide the information. The LLC is easy because it's the same. And for me, for the individual, name, date of birth. I mean, the only thing that'll change would be sort of the governmental thing. I would think I would just probably provide them with a passport, as I'm guessing is the way to go. Here's a copy of my passport number, my date of birth. Here's my home address in whatever country I'm in. This is my home address. And you comply that way. And if you don't, there are penalties. And remember, now you actually do. Some people are like, well, I don't live in the United States. Who cares? Well, you have property in the United States, right? You just bought a piece of property. So whatever fines are going to be incurred, they're going to get attached to the property, and you won't be able to, they're either going to foreclose on it, or you won't be able to sell or refinance the property without paying this thing. And then for the jail stuff, obviously, I can't imagine they're going to go extradite people, but that will probably prevent you from coming to prevent you from coming to the US, because you'll have an arrest warrant, if you do that. So it's going to affect, it's nothing going to affect. But if you're a syndicator and you have international investors coming in, I don't think this is going to have a material impact on those efforts.
Okay. So in my case, where I use an LLC to buy as an LP, I still own that LLC. That is going to need to be documented.
Correct. Right? So let's go through that hypothetical, because that's a good one. It's a kind of simple enough. Everybody, I think, on the call understands they're syndicators, so they get it, right? So you first look at the first level analysis, which would be, let's say, the syndication LLC, right? The 80-20 with the sponsors, right? Well, on that one, as an LP, yeah, hold on. So as an LP, I'm not affected. I'm not a reporting company. I'm not a beneficial owner of that company. No problem. But then my LLC itself, my holding company, let's say I invested in my holding company. Well, that's the reporting. So my Wyoming LLC is a reporting company because I filed it in somewhere. So the Wyoming LLC needs to report as its own individual on its own. And then you, as the owner and manager of that LLC, you're going to be a beneficial owner, and you're going to have to report information based on that LLC, not based on the syndication piece, but based on your LLC that you filed in Wyoming or Delaware, or hopefully Wyoming, Delaware, Texas now, of course. Texas, if you guys don't know, Texas now has joined, little parentheses there. So Texas has joined the top ranks of asset protection recently, September 1st, I think it was. I did a video on my YouTube channel. If you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel, I encourage you to do that. I did a video on Texas. They have now extended charging order protection to single member LLCs. There's only 4 other states that do it: Wyoming, Nevada, Delaware, Alaska, and I think New Mexico is the other one. So now Texas joins that elite group. So if you're a Texas resident, I would just set up a Texas LLC as your holding company now. There's no reason to go to Wyoming or Delaware or anything else. Anyway, a little extra there for you, Julie.
Well, I love that. Now, okay, so I've got my LLC. I go into using this LLC into another asset. That now we're going to create 2 new ones. So those are the ones. I don't need to refile because I've already refiled my name, LLC.
You might depend, but you got to look at each LLC as its own thing. So you may be a beneficial owner, not by direct ownership, because you have an LLC that owns an LLC, but you may have direct control of that underlying entity, right? So you might be a beneficial owner because you have significant control over that LLC, and therefore you would have to report in the filing of that LLC, or the bottom one that you said. So you're going to have you're going to have multiple filings. So if you have an LLC that's owned by an LLC, then I've got the main the bottom LLC, right? I have significant control, so I got to file there. And then on top of that, the owner, which is my LLC, well, I own 100% of that LLC, so I got to report under that LLC as well.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, but so you got to report for every LLC.
Okay.
They want to know who the LLC is and who owns the sucker. That's what they want to know. So if or who has control over it. And so if you own 33 LLCs, there's 33 filings you're going to do. And I haven't seen it. We don't know what it looks like, but there's going to be a way, if you have a lot of LLCs, you're going to be able to get I forget the name of it, like an identification number. So you upload all the information once, they give you this secret password code or whatever, your ID number. So the next time you do it, you don't have to upload everything again. Oh, here's my driver's license. Here's my you can just give them that number. Okay. Right. So it'll be a little bit easier. I presume you're going to have to, my guess is, and I haven't seen what it works. My guess is there's going to be some box you check under penalty of perjury that none of the information has changed, because obviously information, if I moved or something, you may have to update it, but you definitely don't want to be misrepresenting or checking that box and lying to a federal agency, because that's a felony. So you're probably going to check a box, but you're going to have that number. So when you're filling out that info, or whoever's filling it out, instead of having to give that information again, it's like, Mauricio Rauld, here's my number, my FinCEN number. And that's good. We've already got all your information. You don't have to input the information 100 times. Input the information once, get the number, and then use the number moving forward.
Okay. So just some things that I'm thinking about. We've got this real ID that.
When you said real, I thought of Instagram. Oh, I'm like real Instagram. Is that what you're
The real ID that I haven't gone to the DMV because there's too many lines. I don't want to waste my time.
I have a tip for you. I have a great tip for you on that, Julie. So I'll tell you.
Well, I know about it because it's close by you.
No. If you live in California, you need to, and if there's the issue of like, there's lines, which there are.
You can make
there's a little town on the border of California and Arizona called Blythe. There's a DMV in Blythe. There's nobody there ever. So if you ever drive to Arizona or go that direction, just make a pit stop in the DMV. Anyway, sorry, that was
San Clemente. I actually went because it was the least popular.
I spent 4 hours and almost shot myself.
Oh, okay, so there you go. Forget that. But you got your driver's license today. It changes. You get a real ID. That number is going to change. I have to go back up to
No, the number's the same. I've got a real ID. I've got the real ID. It's the same. It's the same number. I've had it all the time. Now it's a new, what I don't know is it's now a new image of the driver's license with a new expiration number. So that you may have to now you go into that amendment piece, right? You've got to amend your filings within 30 days. I don't know if that, to be honest with you, I don't know if that falls into it, but it's something to consider.
Okay. What about, I'm just trying to think of the things that are going to be a problem here. And I'm going to go in, I'm going to take care of my own, or am I going to let that filer take care of it? And I'm going to pay them to do it. Remember, I can't keep track of my LLCs.
You can do it yourself, or you can pay somebody a couple $100 to go deal it with you for you. Now, we're doing it too, and this is how we're going to do it, which is, I think I called around. So this is how everybody's going to do it. You've got a simple thing. Julie and I, we own an LLC. We got to file about $200, whatever, $250, whatever. I forget what we landed on, but $250. But if you've got like the layer on top of layer on top of layer on top of layer, that's going to be like an hourly, not super crazy, but like, $80 an hour, $90 an hour, because we just don't know how long it's going to take us to unwind your crazy structure with 9 co-GPs, and each 9 co-GPs has 5. It's like it could take 4 hours to do that one, and so that's not going to be $200. But if it's just your garden vanilla, I own an LLC and I got my rental property in there, and it's just me, or maybe it's just me and my holding company, simple, $250. If it's complicated with multiple layers and multiple people, then it's going to be an hourly thing, depending on how long it takes.
$250 per. Or your whole,
everyone's its own thing.
Oh my God. Does this have to be done every year, or is it one and done?
No, it's one and done. It's one and done. Unless there's an amendment, unless there's a change, right? If there's a change, you've got to amend it within 30 days of that change.
So do you think that when you're taking on new clients, I send you a new client, you're going to file this right away for them? That's just going to be part of.
Yeah. So moving forward, they're not going to charge you an additional fee for that. What I'm guessing you'll see is the price of LLCs will probably start inching up over time. So if it cost you $700, it might now cost you $800 or $850 or $1,000. Like fast forward 5 years from now, when they realize how much extra work it is, it's just like, look, like everything else, there's a compliance cost. There's no free lunch. Like somebody needs to, just like it used to be that you filed your taxes and it was like one sheet and you checked them, but now you need like a whole tax team and spend thousands of dollars to get your taxes filed. It's the same thing. There's a compliance cost involved. And even if you don't see it because there's no separate charge, it's going to be included and absorbed into that for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Do we have a website?
I'm sorry. One other thing before I forget, this is an important point. I think we did talk about it. So the filer, so me, we are on the hook, right? So when I file your articles of organization for your LLC formation, I am now responsible to get the beneficial owner information to them within 90 days, right? So if I file the LLC and then I'm like, all right, Julie, well, I need this, and you're like, I can't find you, or you're like, I'm not going to give you my freaking home address. I'm going to give you a PO box. I'm like, no. Julie, I need your home. I'm not giving you my home address. Are you crazy? Like I'm a private person. No, I'm on the hook for that. So what's going to happen? This is what I think you're going to find across the industry, and we're definitely going to do that. It's like, we are not going to move a finger or file anything until we have all that information. So if you bring in syndicators, especially for you guys who are syndicating, if you come to us and you're like, we need this LLC filed, I'm like, great, here's the link to fill out your information and your co-sponsors and everybody we need, upload, and we have a portal. So upload the driver's license. We need all of that information before we're comfortable doing that. If not, you can go do it yourself. But then you're also on the hook if your co-sponsors decide to either not give you the home address or give you a fake home address or tell you it's a home address, but it's not. And then it doesn't match with your driver's license. You're like, oh crap. And so now you're like, whatever. So everybody that I've talked to, they're not going to file anything until they have all the information in the bank, because otherwise there's an exposure for the filer. So that's another unintended consequence that you'll start seeing. Makes sense. All right. Boss website. Do we have an address yet for that? Are they going to get it out? Even if they had it out, you couldn't do anything until January 1st. But and I didn't check the last week, but the last time I checked, it still wasn't up and running. So I don't even have a URL, or even if we did have it, it's not even going to get released at the first. So even if it's ready to go, which we don't know if it will be, I think it's going to be, somebody asked me the question today. Like I said, I think it's going to be ready. I just would be shocked if it doesn't have any issues, like it'll crash or you won't be able to upload something. And I'm sure the customer service is going to be top notch over there at FinCEN.
Oh, absolutely.
So it'll be interesting to see how it goes, and maybe we'll do quick updates on how it's going.
Yeah, we'll just need to get that website so that we can get people to understand how to go there and log it up.
I don't even know if it's boss.com or beneficial owner securesystem.com or fincen.com/boss. We don't know that yet.
Okay. How would somebody who has a bunch of LLCs, how would they get a hold of you to do this filing for them?
Yeah, they could just email us at team@plglp.com, team@plglp.com, and just put in their, Corporate Transparency Act, and we'll have somebody reach out and get all the info.
Okay. All right. How can somebody get a hold of you if they want to do, again, get your filings for LLCs, for all the other stuff that you do? So great.
I think the easiest way is we have probably the same one you read. So we put out a report, obviously, called the Corporate Transparency Act. And if you want to get a copy of the report, you can email it to CTA for Corporate Transparency, CTA@plglp.com, CTA@plglp.com. That'll automatically forward you the report, and then you'll have an email. And if you want to then correspond and say, hey, I need help, whatever, that's a good time to do it. And then what I'll do as well is, as updates happen, like for example, since the date I wrote the original report, we went from 30 days to 90 days. It used to be 30 days to 90. So as things get rolled out, updates happen. Obviously, I'll have a specific list of everybody who requested the report. I'll be sending out updates on the Corporate Transparency Act as they become available.
Okay. And so, Mauricio, you do all of the filings, you do the people's PPMs, you do operating agreements.
By the way, this is great. So I'm glad you said that. This year we're adding a real estate transactional practice, which I used to do a couple years ago, but we're expanding now. We're going to be offering, my goal is to offer every legal thing that a syndicator needs: transactional, estate planning, asset protection, entity formation, whatever. Website design, pitch deck. You need a pitch deck? Let us know, because we're going to draft pitch decks for you. Anything that the syndicator needs. Right now, we've only been giving them the securities support, and they got to go to different places. Not anymore. We're gonna have everything under one roof, and whatever you need, it'll be housed. That's the goal for 2024.
All right. Your Instagram. How to get?
It's Mauricio Rauld.
Okay.
At Mauricio Rauld, Mauricio Rauld, and posting a lot of stories right now, because I just found out there's stories, reels, and then the regular, it's so confusing. So I'm doing a lot of stories because that's easy for me, but we'll start getting the reels going, and we'll start getting the stuff that's helpful for people. And Corporate Transparency Act will be putting content out there on this and updates and everything. And follow me there. YouTube.
Have you heard of TikTok? It's a new thing too.
There's only so much. I mean, I'm primarily, LinkedIn's been my main thought platform. That's where I deliver most. And then YouTube. Those are the two main. I'm on Facebook too, but those are really the top three. And then Instagram popped in, so that's 4. TikTok.
It's a lot. Now listen, when someone wants to connect with you on LinkedIn, it's under your name. If someone wants a link to you on Facebook, same thing, under your name.
All under my name. Even the YouTube channel is just my name, Mauricio Rauld. Awesome. Just Google that. Awesome. You cannot miss it.
Well, I so appreciate you. I'm so glad we found the time to visit, to put this together. This information is critical for all the people in our audiences. So I thank you so much for being an advocate for my folks to get this going and be successful. So thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for having me on. I know I'm so pumped that Zoom at 8 has been kicking butt. I remember I came on like 3 years ago, or however long it's been.
It's been 4.5 years.
Yeah, so it's been awesome. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Love it. Support it. And we'll see you dancing at the next event.
I look forward to it. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Julie.
Take good care.